Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The laughter of clinking glasses filled the grand dining room, chandeliers casting golden light over polished oak. Plates of roast beef, sweet corn, and warm bread were laid out like a celebration of Jack's homecoming. His father, Frank, stood at the head of the table, the proud patriarch, holding a glass of aged bourbon that glowed amber in the light. Jack sat across from Samantha, his wife, her smile sweet and warm. Emily, their 12-year-old daughter, giggled at something Jack's sister whispered. For a moment, Jack let himself believe that everything was perfect, that the months of deployment had not frayed the edges of their life together. Frank cleared his throat, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "A toast," he said, voice resonant. He paused, letting the weight of the silence draw every eye in the room. Jack watched Samantha's fingers tighten around her wine glass, knuckles paling. His gut tightened, though he did not know why. Frank raised his glass higher. "To Samantha," he said, voice calm and chilling. "And to her new love. May it last longer than the lies she has told." The glass fell from Samantha's hand, shattering against the plate. Emily's fork clattered to the floor, her eyes wide and shimmering with tears. The entire room fell into stunned silence, as if the world had stopped spinning. Jack's breath caught in his throat. Samantha's face turned pale, lips parted in horror. Cole, sitting beside her, stiffened, his mouth working soundlessly. Jack's eyes locked on Samantha's, and in that single instant, everything he had built, every quiet morning with coffee, every whispered promise of forever, splintered like glass under a hammer. He did not move. His face was a mask, betraying nothing of the roaring storm inside him. Emily began to cry, soft sobs that broke Jack's heart far more than Samantha's betrayal. Frank sat down slowly, a satisfied gleam in his eye. Jack's father had known. The betrayal was not just Samantha's. It was a family wound, festering beneath the surface for months, maybe years. Jack's military training kicked in. In that moment of chaos, he felt nothing but a cold, searing focus. No shouting, no immediate retribution. Instead, he let the silence stretch, every second an eternity of shame for Samantha. He reached for Emily's hand, squeezing it gently. "It is all right, sweetheart," he said, voice soft and even. "It is all right." Inside, he was already seeing the battlefield. Not a war of guns and blood, but of secrets and shadows. Samantha thought she had broken him. She had no idea the kind of man she had married. Wait, if this story gave you chills or made you think twice about trust, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button to support the channel, and subscribe if you never want to miss another jaw-dropping tale. We drop new stories every week that'll leave you speechless. To everyone who's already subscribed, sending you heartfelt love and thanks. Join the family, because here, every story hits different. Now, let's dive back into the story. The dinner ended in a suffocating hush. Plates were left half-eaten, wine glasses still trembling on the table. Samantha tried to speak, some half-formed excuse that never left her lips. Jack ignored her. He gathered Emily in his arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. They walked out into the night air, the Virginia summer thick with the scent of honeysuckle and betrayal. Samantha followed a step behind, her eyes wide, as if realizing for the first time the gravity of what she had done. Jack did not speak. In the car, Emily cried softly, her tears wetting his shoulder as he drove in silence. Samantha reached for his arm, but he pulled away gently, eyes fixed on the road ahead. At home, Jack carried Emily to bed, tucking her in with a careful tenderness that belied the storm in his chest. He kissed her forehead, whispered that he loved her, and watched her eyelids flutter shut. When he stood, he saw Samantha waiting in the doorway, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Jack, she began. "Not now," he said, voice low and calm. He walked past her, each step deliberate, each breath a quiet refusal to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. In their bedroom, Jack sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Rage burned in his veins, but he did not let it consume him. Instead, he began to observe Samantha's face, the way her lips quivered, the sheen of sweat on her forehead, the small details of a woman caught in her own web of lies. She tried again. "Jack, please. Let me explain." He turned his head slowly, meeting her gaze with an icy calm. "You will have your chance," he said. "But not tonight." She faltered, eyes flicking away. Jack watched her retreat to the bathroom, the door closing softly behind her. He heard the click of the lock and the muffled sob that followed. He sat in the darkness for a long time, the only sound the ticking of the old clock on the dresser. Each second was a heartbeat of quiet fury, each breath a promise of what was to come. He would not confront her tonight. She would think he was too stunned, too broken to fight back. She would believe her lies were still safe. Let her believe it. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the bedroom in soft amber light. Jack lay awake, the sheets cold against his skin. He listened to the quiet murmur of the world outside, the distant call of birds, the hum of an early morning commuter's car. Samantha was still asleep, her back turned to him. In the gentle glow of dawn, she looked innocent, peaceful. But Jack's eyes saw the truth, the deceit etched in every line of her face. He rose without a sound, moving with the silent precision of a soldier on patrol. In the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face, staring at the man in the mirror. The calm in his eyes was real, but beneath it simmered a fury that would not be silenced. He dressed quietly, every movement deliberate. In the kitchen, he brewed coffee, the familiar scent grounding him in reality. Samantha appeared in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed, lips parted as if to plead. "Jack, do not," he said, voice like steel. He turned back to the coffee, ignoring the way she flinched. She hovered behind him, unsure, as if sensing that the man before her was not the same man she had betrayed. Jack took his coffee and stepped outside, letting the morning air fill his lungs. He walked the perimeter of the yard, a habit from deployment. Every step measured, every detail of his surroundings noted. The garden Samantha had once tended now seemed a battlefield of secrets. The small, white blooms of her favorite lilies mocked him with their innocence. In that quiet, Jack's mind was sharp and clear. He cataloged everything he knew. The calls Samantha had taken at odd hours, the business trips that had never quite added up, the late nights she had claimed were just work. Each piece was a puzzle, and Jack had always been good at puzzles. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old messages. Patterns emerged, dates, times, small inconsistencies that no one else would have noticed. He saw them all now, with the cold clarity of a soldier preparing for battle. He would not lash out. He would not give Samantha the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. She would expect rage, but Jack would give her something far more terrifying. A calculated, patient revenge that would strip away every lie she had built. He sipped his coffee slowly, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. He would wait. He would watch. And when the time was right, he would take everything back, piece by piece, lie by lie. Let Samantha think she had won. Let her believe in her victory. Because Jack Hastings was no longer just her husband. He was a soldier at war, and this was a battle he would win. Jack stood at the kitchen counter, methodically slicing vegetables for Emily's lunch. The sun had barely risen, and the world outside was hushed, but inside, every detail was sharp in his mind. Samantha entered, her hair damp from the shower, eyes hollow with fear. She hesitated at the threshold, watching Jack move with the calm precision of a man who had everything under control. He glanced at her once, then back at the cutting board. "Emily likes extra carrots," he said evenly, as if discussing the weather. Samantha's mouth opened, but she said nothing. He packed the lunchbox, each movement deliberate. There was no tremor in his hands, no flicker of the rage that simmered beneath his skin. Samantha watched him like a deer caught in headlights, unsure whether to approach or flee. "Jack," she whispered, stepping closer. I swear it was a mistake." He set down the knife with a quiet click. "Mistake," he echoed, his voice measured and soft. "Interesting word, Samantha." She flinched at the use of her full name. He turned, eyes meeting hers with a calm intensity that made her swallow hard. "I need you to take Emily to school today," he said. "She needs stability, and you will act like everything is normal." But he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "For her sake, Samantha, everything is normal." She nodded shakily, gathering Emily's backpack and walking out without another word. Jack watched them leave, his face a blank slate. Once the door closed, he allowed himself a single breath. His mind moved like clockwork, analyzing every word, every lie. He knew Samantha would think this was temporary, that he was too shocked to act. That was what he wanted her to think. He took out his phone and called Ben. The line clicked alive. "We start today," Jack said. "I want everything." The old barn was a relic of Jack's grandfather, long forgotten on the edge of the family property. Now, it became a fortress. Jack stood in the dust and shadows, the smell of hay and earth grounding him in the present. Ben arrived with a laptop and a calm smile. "You always did like to be thorough," he said, setting up his equipment on an old workbench. Jack nodded. "This is not just about Samantha," he said. "It is about everyone who helped her. Everyone who thought they could use my family's name, my honor, as a shield for their greed." Ben's fingers moved across the keys, screens flickering to life with lines of code and data. "I will trace every call, every payment," he said. "They will not see us coming." Jack watched the screen, his eyes narrowing as pieces of information clicked into place. There were names he recognized: Cole's business partner, a mutual friend who had always seemed too curious about Jack's military contracts. Each name a thread, waiting to be pulled. As the sun climbed higher, Jack's phone buzzed with a message from Heather. She had found receipts, hotel rooms booked under aliases, restaurant bills that did not match Samantha's supposed business dinners. Jack texted back 2 words: "Keep going." He leaned against the rough wooden post, the barn around him a sanctuary of secrets. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious. Inside, Jack's mind was a machine, every thought a weapon. Ben looked up. "There is something else," he said, turning the screen toward Jack. "A transfer, large amounts, moved to a company in Samantha's name. But that company, it does not exist. It is a shell." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then that is our next target." He felt no rush, no need for immediate confrontation. Let Samantha and Cole think they had escaped notice. Let them believe in their untouchable world. The real battle was only beginning. That evening, the house was filled with the glow of candles and the soft murmur of music, Samantha's attempt to mend what was already broken beyond repair. Jack sat across from her at the dinner table, his expression serene. He watched her carefully. The way her smile faltered when she thought he was not looking, the nervous flick of her eyes whenever her phone buzzed. "Is everything all right?" she asked, forcing a brightness into her voice. Jack sipped his wine. "Of course," he said smoothly. "Everything is perfect." Samantha exhaled in relief, her shoulders relaxing. She leaned forward, her hand brushing his. "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice low. "But I promise you, Jack, I will make it right. You will see." He tilted his head, studying her as if she were a specimen under glass. "I am sure you will," he said softly. The doorbell rang. Samantha jumped, her hand snapping back. Jack stood and answered the door, finding Cole on the porch, his smile wide and confident. "Jack," Cole said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Glad you are home, brother." Jack's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Brother," he repeated. "Yes. Come in." As Cole and Samantha exchanged a glance, something unspoken, something smug, Jack watched them both. He saw it all. The way Cole's hand lingered too long on Samantha's lower back. The way Samantha's laugh was just a touch too loud. They thought he was blind. They thought his silence meant surrender. He served them dinner, his movements smooth, his words polite. He let them revel in their false security, feeding each other small lies like dessert. Inside, Jack was ice and iron. Every smile, every casual word was another log on the fire. He was mapping every detail, every weakness. And when the time came, he would use them all. As Cole leaned back, grinning, Jack raised his glass in a mock toast. "To family," he said, voice calm, eyes cold. Samantha laughed, the sound brittle. Cole grinned, thinking the battle was already won. Jack's smile did not waver. They would learn soon enough. The old barn had become Jack's headquarters, a place where he could let down the mask and sharpen his focus. Dust motes drifted in the golden rays of the setting sun, catching on the rusted farming tools that lined the walls. Ben was there already, hunched over the glow of his laptop, his fingers dancing across the keys like a pianist playing a requiem. Jack approached with the quiet confidence of a man who had spent years studying the patterns of war. "What do you have for me?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with something colder. Ben looked up, dark eyes glittering. "Plenty," he said. "I have pulled the call logs and cross-referenced them with the hotel reservations. There are more than a dozen meetings between Samantha and Cole, always when you were away, always at places just out of town. And I found something else." He turned the laptop to Jack. Jack leaned in, the blue light painting harsh shadows on his face. There were emails, long, rambling confessions of love from Samantha to Cole, and financial records that led to a shell company registered in Delaware. Every file was another nail in the coffin. Jack's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he clicked through each document, his eyes scanning, cataloging. Each detail was ammunition. Each careless word they had left behind was a testament to their arrogance. Ben cleared his throat. "This is not just an affair," he said quietly. "This is calculated. Money laundering, at the very least. And Cole, he is tied up in a dozen other shady deals. Samantha is just one part of it." Jack straightened, his silhouette tall and resolute. "Then we will expose every thread," he said. "Not just them, everyone who profited from my family's trust." He closed the laptop, his movements precise. "I will need more," he said. "Bank statements, offshore accounts, every friend who covered for them. They think they have won, but they have no idea." Ben nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. "I will get it," he said. "They will not see it coming." As they worked late into the night, Jack felt the weight of his fury sharpen into something clean and lethal. The betrayers thought they had him cornered, but they were playing checkers while he played chess. The next morning, Jack met Heather in a small coffee shop at the edge of town. The place was quiet, the warm scent of roasted beans wrapping around them like a comforting shroud. Heather sat across from him, her face pale but set in a grim line of resolve. She pushed a manila folder across the table. "These are the receipts," she said. "Hotels, dinners, gifts. He has been using our money to spoil her." Jack opened the folder, his eyes scanning the neat rows of evidence. Heather's hands were trembling slightly as she wrapped them around her cup. "He thinks I am too weak to fight back," she said, her voice low. "But I am done pretending." Jack looked up, his gaze steady. "You are stronger than you think," he said. "And together, we can make sure they pay for every lie." Heather's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. "I just want him to know he cannot take everything from me," she said. "I want him to feel what it is like to be stripped bare." "You will," Jack promised. "But it has to be done carefully. If we rush, they will slip away." Heather nodded, her jaw tightening. "What do you need from me?" "Names," Jack said. "Friends who covered for them. Businesses that helped them hide. I will handle the rest." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared betrayal pressing down on them. Outside, the world moved on. Children ran past the windows, the low hum of traffic a constant backdrop. But in that quiet corner, Jack and Heather forged an unspoken pact. They would not let their anger consume them. They would let it guide them, every step precise and deliberate. Jack reached across the table and rested his hand on hers, the gesture simple but resolute. "This is not just about them," he said. "It is about taking back what they stole, our dignity, our peace." Heather met his gaze, and in her eyes, Jack saw a flicker of the strength he needed. "Then let us begin," she said. Jack returned home late that evening, the air outside sharp with the scent of rain. The house was quiet, the only light coming from the small lamp in the living room. Samantha sat curled on the couch, her face pale and her hair pulled back in a careful braid. She looked up when he entered, eyes wide with a forced softness. "Jack," she said softly, "where have you been?" He removed his coat, folding it with meticulous care. "Out," he said simply. She swallowed, her fingers twisting in her lap. "You have barely spoken to me," she said. "I need to explain." Jack's eyes met hers, calm and unwavering. "Do you?" he asked quietly. She faltered, lips parting but no words coming. He walked past her to the kitchen, the soft sound of his footsteps on the tile floor echoing in the stillness. He poured himself a glass of water, each movement deliberate. Samantha rose and followed, her voice pleading. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. "I was lonely. You were gone so long." Jack turned slowly, setting the glass down with a quiet click. "Lonely," he said, tasting the word like bitter wine. "And so you turned to him." She reached for him, but he stepped back, the distance between them a chasm. "Jack, please," she whispered. "I still love you." He let out a soft breath, his face expressionless. "I am sure you do," he said. "But love does not excuse betrayal." Samantha's shoulders sagged, her hands falling to her sides. She looked like a child caught in a lie, the mask of her confidence slipping away. Jack walked past her without another word, his steps measured and unhurried. He paused at the doorway, glancing back at the woman who had once been his whole world. "I will not stop you from playing your games," he said. "But remember, every lie leaves a trace." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Samantha standing in the silence of her own making. The next morning, Jack stood in the barn, his hands resting on the rough wood of the old workbench. The smell of oil and dust grounded him, steadying his thoughts. Ben was already at work, hunched over a small stack of printed documents and a laptop screen that flickered with encrypted files. "I dug deeper," Ben said, his voice low and focused. "Those shell companies Samantha is tied to, they are not just fronts for the affair. There is a money trail leading to something bigger, Jack. It is not just personal betrayal anymore." Jack's jaw tightened. "Show me." Ben turned the laptop around, the screen filled with spreadsheets and bank statements. "Here," he said, pointing. "Large transfers, amounts that do not make sense for a simple affair. And look, these accounts connect to a veterans charity, one that Cole has been funneling money through." Jack studied the numbers, his mind working like a soldier mapping enemy terrain. "A veterans charity," he murmured. "They used my name, my service." "Exactly," Ben said. "It is fraud, using wounded soldiers as a front to launder money. Samantha is right in the middle of it, Jack. She did not just cheat on you. She sold out your brothers in uniform." The fury that had simmered in Jack's chest for days crystallized into something ice-cold and lethal. "They have no idea what they have done," he said quietly. "This is no longer about marriage. This is war." Ben nodded, his expression grim. "We need more solid evidence. Something we can take to the authorities. Otherwise, they will slip through the cracks." Jack straightened, his eyes hard. "We will get it," he said. "And when we do, I want every last detail. No mercy." As the morning light slanted through the barn's cracked windows, Jack felt a calm certainty settle over him. Samantha's betrayal was personal, but the web she had woven reached further than either of them had known. And Jack Hastings would burn it all down. That evening, Jack sat in his truck, parked outside the old accounting office where Heather worked. The lot was empty except for a single flickering light above the back door. Heather emerged, a stack of folders clutched to her chest. She slid into the passenger seat, her eyes bright with determination. I went through every record Cole had access to, she said. These are the financial statements. They prove that the veterans' charity was nothing but a front. And Samantha? She signed off on every transfer. Jack took the folders, his hands steady as he flipped through the pages. Each line item was another crack in the armor Samantha and Cole had built. Each forged signature another lie exposed. They thought no one would look this closely, Heather said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and exhilaration. They thought you would just walk away. Jack looked up, his eyes cold and unyielding. They do not understand, he said quietly. They thought betrayal would break me. But they forget, I have been through real war. And I do not back down from a fight. Heather took a shaky breath. What will you do with this? Jack's lips curved into a grim smile. I will let them hang themselves with it, he said. Piece by piece, I will feed it to the right people. They will never see it coming. Heather watched him, a flicker of hope in her eyes. You will win, Jack, she said softly. He did not answer. He did not need to. In that moment, Jack's silence was a promise, a vow that every lie, every theft, would be repaid in full. As Heather left the truck and disappeared into the night, Jack turned the key in the ignition, the engine rumbling to life beneath him. He felt the road stretching ahead, every mile another step closer to justice. He would not rush. He would not falter. He would watch them grow bold and careless, and when the moment came, he would strike. Not with anger, but with the cold, patient precision of a soldier who knew exactly where to aim. The next evening, Jack hosted a small dinner party, a charade of normalcy that would have fooled anyone who did not know the truth. The dining room was warm with the glow of candles, laughter weaving through the air like a lie waiting to be told. Samantha sat at the head of the table, her smile too bright, her laughter a little too forced. Beside her, Cole looked completely at ease, leaning back in his chair as if the world belonged to him. Jack played the part of the gracious host perfectly. He poured wine, shared stories from his deployments, stories that made Samantha shift uncomfortably every time he mentioned loyalty or sacrifice. Cole grinned and toasted Jack, his words dripping with false camaraderie. To old friends and new beginnings, he said, his glass raised high. Jack clinked his glass against Cole's, his smile calm and measured. To truth, he said softly, and to the reckoning that always comes. Samantha laughed nervously, glancing at Jack with eyes that held a flicker of unease. She did not know how much he had seen, how much he already knew. Cole, oblivious and smug, reached for her hand under the table. She let him, her eyes darting away from Jack's steady gaze. Jack watched them carefully, noting every detail. The way Cole's hand lingered too long, the way Samantha's fingers trembled just slightly before curling around his. They thought their secret was safe. They thought he was still blind. As the dinner went on, Jack let them bask in their illusion. He asked about their plans, their work, feigning polite interest. He watched the way they preened, feeding off each other's arrogance. Every word they spoke was another thread in the web of their downfall. When the night ended, Jack saw them out, his smile never wavering. Samantha kissed his cheek, her lips cold against his skin. Cole clapped him on the shoulder, his grin wide and oblivious. Jack closed the door behind them, the smile fading from his face. He leaned against the wood, his breath slow and controlled. They thought they had won. They thought they were safe. But Jack knew better. And soon, they would know it too. The night after the dinner party, Jack sat in the barn with Ben and Heather, the air around them crackling with quiet intensity. The barn was lit by a single bulb hanging from the rafters, shadows dancing across their determined faces. Ben leaned over his laptop, fingers moving with methodical precision. I have uploaded everything, he said. Emails, phone logs, bank transfers, everything that ties Samantha and Cole to the veterans' charity fraud. Heather's eyes shone with a fierce light. "We have enough to ruin them," she said, her voice steady. "But if we release it all at once, they will scatter like rats." Jack nodded. "That is why we start small," he said. "A single leak, just enough to unsettle them. They will grow careless, start making mistakes." Ben's lips curved into a faint smile. "Where do you want it to land?" he asked. Jack's eyes were hard as steel. "A local blog, one known for exposing corruption. They will bite, and the story will spread." Heather handed over a USB drive, her fingers brushing Jack's for just a moment. "This is everything I could find on Cole's fake charity work," she said. "It will be enough to start the fire." Jack took the drive and slipped it into his pocket. He could feel the weight of it, a small object that held the seeds of their enemy's destruction. They worked through the night, the barn filled with the low hum of computers and the quiet rustle of paper. Outside, the world slept, oblivious to the war that was about to erupt. As dawn painted the sky in pale pinks and golds, Jack leaned back in his chair, his mind clear and cold. "They think they have won," he said softly. "But they have no idea that this is only the beginning." Heather met his gaze, her expression resolute. "Let them think they are safe," she said. "Let them believe their lies are still hidden." Jack's lips curved into a grim smile. "Let them," he said. "For now." 2 days later, the blog post hit the town like a thunderclap. Jack sat in his truck, parked outside a small cafe, watching as people scrolled through the article on their phones, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. The post was brutal in its simplicity, an exposé of Cole's veterans' charity, the missing funds, and the quiet implication that there were bigger secrets yet to be uncovered. It did not name Samantha directly, but it did not have to. Those who knew her knew the game. Jack watched as Samantha's phone lit up with messages, concerned friends, worried family, all of them circling her like sharks in bloody water. He could almost hear the panic in her voice as she tried to calm them, to pretend that nothing was wrong. He sipped his coffee slowly, his face calm. In his earpiece, Ben's voice was a low murmur. "They are scrambling," he said. "Cole has already made 3 calls to his lawyer. Samantha is calling every mutual friend, trying to shut this down." Jack's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. "Good," he said. "The more they panic, the more they expose themselves." He watched as Samantha stepped outside the cafe, her face pale and drawn. She scanned the street, eyes darting nervously, but Jack did not move. He watched her from behind tinted glass, a silent observer to her unraveling world. Cole appeared moments later, his face red with fury as he barked into his phone. Jack noted every detail, the tightness of his jaw, the way his hand shook just slightly as he ended the call. Fear had begun to creep into their overconfident smiles. Jack knew it was only the beginning. Let them sweat. Let them taste the fear they had once inflicted on others. Every lie they had told was a thread in the web, and Jack was pulling at each one with deliberate, patient precision. As he drove away, he felt the satisfaction of a soldier who had just won the first skirmish. The real battle still lay ahead, but for the first time in weeks, Jack felt the thrill of victory humming in his veins. That night, Jack stood in his study, the room quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock on the mantel. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the photographs lining the walls, memories of deployments, medals earned, and the family he had fought so hard to protect. Samantha entered, her face drawn and pale. She stood in the doorway, her hands twisting in the hem of her shirt. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." He turned to face her, his eyes calm and steady. "Talk," he said simply. She stepped closer, the flickering firelight catching the sheen of tears in her eyes. "I know things look bad," she said, her voice cracking. "But it is not what it seems." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Then explain," he said softly. She hesitated, her lips parting, but no words came. For the first time, she looked truly lost, like a woman who had built her world on lies and was only now realizing how fragile it all was. Jack's gaze did not waver. "I have spent years serving my country," he said, his voice low and even. "I know what it means to fight for something bigger than myself. But what you did, it was never just about you and me." Samantha's shoulders slumped, her eyes filling with tears. "I was scared," she whispered. "I thought you would never come back. I thought I was alone." Jack shook his head slowly. "You chose betrayal over honesty," he said. "You chose greed over love. And now, you will live with those choices." She sank into a chair, her shoulders shaking. Jack watched her for a moment, then turned back to the fire, his face hard and resolute. He would not let her tears sway him. She had made her bed, and now she would lie in it. As he stared into the flames, he felt the weight of the past settle around him. Every sacrifice, every battle, every promise he had kept. He would see this through to the end. Because for Jack Hastings, there was no other way. Jack sat alone on the back porch that night, the darkness stretching out before him like an endless ocean. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the soft chirp of crickets, but his mind was 1,000 miles away, turning over every detail, every betrayal, every careful step he had taken. His phone buzzed softly in his hand. Ben's voice came through the earpiece, calm and focused. "They are starting to turn on each other," he said. "Cole is blaming Samantha for the leaks. Samantha is trying to distance herself from him. They are unraveling, Jack." A slow smile curved Jack's lips. "Good," he said. "The more they panic, the more mistakes they will make." He leaned back in his chair, the old wood creaking under his weight. The stars above were bright and cold, pinpricks of light in the velvet sky. He let the silence stretch around him, feeling the quiet strength of it seep into his bones. He thought of Emily, asleep in her room down the hall. She deserved a world free of the lies and the filth that Samantha and Cole had wrapped themselves in. He would make sure she had it, even if it meant burning down everything else to the ground. Ben's voice pulled him back to the present. "What is the next move?" he asked. Jack's eyes narrowed. "We wait," he said. "We watch. They think they still have control. Let them believe that. Let them dig their own graves." Patience had always been Jack's greatest weapon, more than any gun, any strategy. It was the thing that had kept him alive in war, the thing that would see him through this battle, too. As the night deepened around him, Jack's mind was a quiet storm of plans and possibilities. He knew the end game was coming, and when it did, Samantha and Cole would not even see it coming. He closed his eyes, letting the cool night air wash over him. For now, he would wait. But when the time was right, he would strike with the precision of a soldier and the fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. The next morning, Jack moved through the house with the same calm purpose as always. He brewed coffee in the kitchen, the rich scent filling the air. Samantha hovered in the doorway, watching him with wary eyes. "Jack, she began, her voice hesitant. He turned to her, his face an unreadable mask. "Do not," he said quietly. "Not now." She fell silent, her hands twisting in her robe. He let the quiet stretch, let her feel the weight of her own lies pressing down on her shoulders. At breakfast, he was the perfect father, packing Emily's lunch, ruffling her hair, making her laugh with old army stories. Samantha watched from across the table, her smile brittle, her fingers drumming against the wood. "Are you sure you are all right?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his. Jack looked at her, his expression calm. "I am fine," he said. "Just tired." She nodded slowly, relief flickering in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought his silence meant defeat. But every word he spoke was calculated, every gesture deliberate. He let her think he was broken, that he was still reeling from the betrayal. Let her guard slip, let her grow comfortable again. That afternoon, he went to the garage, the place where he kept the old military footlocker filled with memories, photos, medals, fragments of a life built on loyalty and sacrifice. He opened it, running his fingers over the worn patches of his uniform, the steel tags that had never left his neck. They were reminders of who he was, and who he still had to be. When he came back inside, Samantha was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. She did not see him standing in the doorway, did not see the way his eyes narrowed as he caught snatches of her whispered conversation. He turned away before she noticed him, his face calm and smooth. She thought she was playing him, but Jack Hastings had learned long ago that the best way to win a war was to let the enemy believe you had already lost. Later that week, Jack met Heather at a quiet diner on the edge of town. The place was nearly empty, the neon sign buzzing softly in the window. She sat across from him, her eyes fierce with purpose. "I got into Cole's work computer," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "There are contracts, phony charities, fake donors, even payments to politicians. He is deeper in this than I ever imagined." Jack took the drive, slipping it into his pocket. "You did well," he said. "This is exactly what we need." Heather's fingers drummed on the table, her nerves taut. "I do not know how much longer I can do this," she said quietly. "He is getting suspicious. He keeps asking questions." Jack reached across the table, his hand steady on hers. "Just a little longer," he said. "They will not see it coming until it is too late." She nodded, swallowing hard. "All right," she said. "I trust you." He offered a small smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "We are almost there," he said. "Every move they make now is another step into the trap." As he left the diner, the night air was cool and sharp against his skin. He walked back to his truck, his mind already 10 steps ahead. The pieces were all falling into place. Samantha's guilt, Cole's arrogance, the web of corruption that spread out like a cancer. They thought they were safe. They thought their secrets were buried deep enough to stay hidden. But Jack had spent a lifetime learning how to read the battlefield. And he knew that no matter how carefully you laid your plans, the truth always found a way to the surface. He started the engine, the quiet rumble of power a comforting sound in the darkness. As he pulled away from the diner, he felt a grim satisfaction settle in his chest. Let them keep playing their games. Let them dance in the shadows of their own making. Because Jack Hastings was done playing the fool. The following weekend, Samantha and Cole hosted a small gathering at Cole's sleek, modern home. Jack was invited, of course he was. They wanted to flaunt their smugness in plain sight, convinced his silence meant weakness. Jack arrived in a pressed shirt, his smile calm and polite. The living room was filled with polite laughter, soft music playing from the speakers. Cole held court in the center of the room, charming and confident, the perfect host. "Jack," Cole called, raising a glass of bourbon in greeting. "Glad you could make it." Jack's eyes were cold, but his voice was smooth as silk. "Would not miss it," he said. He accepted the drink, his fingers steady on the glass. Samantha hovered at Cole's side, her laugh just a touch too loud, her hand resting on Cole's arm as if she needed his strength to prop her up. She looked at Jack with carefully measured concern. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice soft and sweet. Jack smiled, the expression not touching his eyes. "Better every day," he said. "It is amazing what clarity can do for a man." Cole's eyes flickered, but he covered it quickly with another toast. "To moving on," he said, his voice a little too eager. Jack lifted his glass. "To moving on," he echoed softly, his tone mild, almost amused. He sipped the bourbon slowly, savoring the smoky burn that matched the cold fire in his chest. As the night wore on, Jack watched them carefully. Cole's smile was just a shade too bright, his laughter a little forced. Samantha clung to his arm, but her eyes darted nervously when she thought Jack was not looking. They were playing a dangerous game, and they did not even realize the rules had changed. Every careless laugh, every smug word, it was another note in the symphony of their own destruction. Jack let them have their moment. Let them think they were untouchable, safe in their pretty lies. He had learned long ago that arrogance was the easiest weakness to exploit. And tonight, he saw it shining in every false smile and every careless word. The next day, Jack returned to the barn with Ben and Heather. The glow of the laptop screens lit their faces as they pored over the files Heather had secured. Bank records, names, dates, every piece another thread in the web. Heather's eyes were fierce, her jaw set. "They are getting bold," she said. "Cole has been bragging to his partners about how no one can touch him. He thinks he has everyone in his pocket." Jack's expression was cold and steady. "That is the opening we need," he said. "We will give him something he cannot resist." Ben looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "A false deal?" he asked. "Bait him into stepping out of the shadows." Jack nodded. "Exactly. Something lucrative, something he thinks will cement his power. We will let him trap himself with his own greed." Heather leaned forward. "I can help with that," she said. "Cole has been talking about a new land deal, something he wants to push through without scrutiny. I know the man who can offer it to him. He owes me a favor." Jack's lips curved slightly. "Make the call," he said. "We will let Cole think he is about to secure everything he ever wanted." The plan took shape that night, every detail mapped with military precision. Jack's mind worked like a machine, each piece of the puzzle falling into place. The false deal would be baited with just enough truth to make it irresistible. Cole would believe it was his chance to seize power, and in his arrogance, he would reveal every secret he had fought to keep hidden. As the night deepened, Jack felt the calm certainty of a man who had found his enemy's weakness. They would not rush. They would not show their hand too soon. They would let Cole come to them, walking straight into the noose he had woven with his own lies. By the end of the week, the bait was set. Jack's contact, a savvy businessman with a reputation for ruthless deals, met with Cole at an upscale bar downtown. Jack watched from a distance, his posture relaxed, his eyes taking in every movement. The businessman, a man named Lawrence, played his role perfectly. He offered Cole a chance to buy into a major development project, something that would give him even more power and money. Cole, hungry and arrogant, took the bait without hesitation. Jack saw the spark of greed in Cole's eyes as Lawrence laid out the false details. "This is the kind of deal that changes everything," Lawrence said smoothly. "But it requires trust. Absolute trust." Cole leaned in, his smirk confident. "Trust is easy when the money is right," he said. "I have done this before." Jack's jaw tightened. "Yes," he murmured to himself. "You have." When the meeting ended, Cole swaggered out of the bar, his phone already buzzing with calls to his partners. Jack followed at a distance, every step measured in silence. He watched the way Cole's shoulders squared with false confidence, the way his smile never wavered. Cole thought he was on the verge of victory. He did not realize he was already a man undone. Jack returned to the barn that night, meeting Ben and Heather in the dim light of the hanging bulb. "He took it," Jack said, his voice calm. "He thinks he has won." Ben's eyes were bright. "He has no idea what is waiting for him," he said. Jack nodded. "No," he said softly. "He does not." He felt a quiet satisfaction settle over him, a sense of finality that had eluded him for too long. Cole and Samantha had built their power on lies and stolen trust. But now, every step they took was a step deeper into their own ruin. Jack looked at the wall of evidence before him. Every file, every photo, every stolen dollar accounted for. He felt no pity, no hesitation. This was justice, long overdue. And when the final piece fell into place, Jack Hastings would be ready. By the end of the week, the bait was set. Jack's contact, a savvy businessman with a reputation for ruthless deals, met with Cole at an upscale bar downtown. Jack watched from a distance, his posture relaxed, his eyes taking in every movement. The businessman, a man named Lawrence, played his role perfectly. He offered Cole a chance to buy into a major development project, something that would give him even more power and money. Cole, hungry and arrogant, took the bait without hesitation. Jack saw the spark of greed in Cole's eyes as Lawrence laid out the false details. "This is the kind of deal that changes everything," Lawrence said smoothly. "But it requires trust. Absolute trust." Cole leaned in, his smirk confident. Trust is easy when the money is right, he said. I have done this before. Jack's jaw tightened. Yes, he murmured to himself. You have. When the meeting ended, Cole swaggered out of the bar, his phone already buzzing with calls to his partners. Jack followed at a distance, every step measured and silent. He watched the way Cole's shoulders squared with false confidence, the way his smile never wavered. Cole thought he was on the verge of victory. He did not realize he was already a man undone. Jack returned to the barn that night, meeting Ben and Heather in the dim light of the hanging bulb. He took it, Jack said, his voice calm. He thinks he has won. Ben's eyes were bright. He has no idea what is waiting for him, he said. Jack nodded. No, he said softly. He does not. He felt a quiet satisfaction settle over him, a sense of finality that had eluded him for too long. Cole and Samantha had built their power on lies and stolen trust. But now, every step they took was a step deeper into their own ruin. Jack looked at the wall of evidence before him. Every file, every photo, every stolen dollar accounted for. He felt no pity, no hesitation. This was justice, long overdue. And when the final piece fell into place, Jack Hastings would be ready. Jack had thought he knew every enemy he faced, every secret Samantha and Cole had buried. But that night, as he sat in the barn with Ben and Heather, the phone rang, a number Jack had not seen in years. His heart clenched as he answered. A voice, low and cold, spoke on the other end. Hello, Jack, the voice said. It has been a long time. Jack's hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? He asked, his voice calm. But inside he felt the sudden shift in the air, like a cold wind sweeping through a warm room. You know what I want, the voice said. You have been digging into things that were never meant to be found. Samantha was never just a wife. She was a tool, a piece in a game you were never meant to win. Jack's jaw clenched. Samantha's father, he said slowly. You have been behind this from the start. The voice gave a soft chuckle. Clever as ever, he said. You see, Jack, this was never about an affair. It was about your family's legacy, the contracts, the money, the connections. Samantha was sent to you for a reason. Jack felt a cold fury settle over him, his mind already racing. You think you can threaten me now? He said. You think I will back down? The voice grew softer, almost mocking. You have no idea what you are up against, he said. If you expose me, you will bring down everyone, your family, your name. Are you willing to destroy everything for the truth? Jack's voice was ice. Yes, he said, because I will not let men like you hide behind lies any longer. There was a pause, and then the line went dead. Jack lowered the phone slowly, his breath even, but his heart pounding. Heather looked at him, her face pale. What was that? She asked. Jack met her gaze, his eyes cold and certain. It was the man who taught Samantha how to lie, he said. And he just made his last mistake. The revelation of Samantha's father's role shifted everything. Jack felt the weight of generations pressing on him. Family honor, old debts, secrets that had festered in the dark for far too long. That night, he sat in the barn, the map of lies and betrayal spread out before him. Heather sat across from him, her fingers tight around a cup of coffee gone cold. Who is he really? She asked quietly. Jack stared at the wall of evidence, the threads of red that crisscrossed like veins. He was a defense contractor, he said finally. My father worked with him years ago. They fell out over corruption in the contracts. My father tried to stop it. He failed. Heather's eyes widened. And Samantha? Jack nodded slowly. She was the price. Her father groomed her to be the perfect spy, a wife who could dig into my family's secrets, steal everything from within. Heather's face paled, her breath catching. He used her, and she let him. Jack's jaw tightened, his fists clenching. She chose this, he said. She chose him over the family she was supposed to build with me. He rose, pacing the length of the barn, every step measured and controlled. I will not let them bury the truth, he said. Not this time. Heather stood, her voice firm. Then what is next? Jack turned, his eyes steady and cold. We finish what they started, he said. We expose the entire operation, the fake charities, the shell companies, the politicians who looked the other way. Heather's chin lifted. You are risking everything, she said softly. I know, Jack said, but I would rather burn down everything than let them keep their stolen power. The wind outside rattled the barn doors again, the night deep and still. Jack felt the calm certainty of a man who had finally seen the enemy's face and knew exactly where to aim. Tomorrow, he would begin the final phase. Because for Jack Hastings, the truth was no longer a choice, it was a duty. The night before the final phase began, Jack sat alone in the barn, the only light coming from the flickering lantern above his head. The air smelled of oil and old wood, grounding him as he reviewed every detail of the plan. Heather had gone home to rest, her nerves frayed but her spirit unbroken. Ben was still at his laptop, typing steadily, his eyes focused and unblinking. Jack watched him for a moment, then spoke quietly. How soon can we launch everything? Ben did not look up. By dawn, he said. I am compiling the files, cleaning the metadata. When we release them, there will be no doubt. Jack nodded, his expression unreadable. He walked to the wall, tracing one of the red threads with his finger. So much had been built on lies. His marriage, his family's legacy, the very future of the life he had once thought unbreakable. But there was no more doubt in his heart. He would not let Samantha's father, or Cole, or any of them walk away clean. He had already seen what they were capable of. He had already paid the price in sleepless nights and quiet rage. The barn was still, the weight of history pressing down on him like the steady beat of his own heart. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, carrying the scent of the river and the promise of a new day. Ben's fingers paused on the keyboard. Jack, he said quietly, this will end everything. There is no going back after this. Jack looked at him, his face hard but his voice calm. There should not be any going back, he said. This is the end, and they will learn what it means to face the truth. He turned back to the door, the night waiting just beyond. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning they had all tried to bury. And Jack was ready. As dawn broke, the town was quiet, too quiet, Jack thought. He drove through the sleepy streets, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. It was the calm before the storm, and he felt it like an electric charge in the air. At the edge of town, he met with Heather in an abandoned warehouse, the metal walls cold and echoing with every breath. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was steady, resolute. Are you sure this is the right way? She asked, her voice soft but firm. Jack looked at her, his gaze unwavering. It is the only way, he said. They used my name, my family's honor, to hide their crimes. Now they will answer for it. She handed him a flash drive, her fingers cold against his skin. This is everything. Bank records, contracts, emails. Once you release this, there is no going back. Jack nodded, slipping the drive into his pocket. I know, he said. They will not have anywhere left to hide. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what they were about to do pressing in around them. Heather's eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt. She found none. When this is done, she said quietly, what will you do? Jack took a slow breath. I will rebuild, he said simply. For Emily. For the future they tried to steal. Heather nodded, a flicker of something like hope in her eyes. Then let us end this, she said. They left the warehouse together, the rising sun painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Jack felt the weight of the day settle over him like a second skin. But there was no fear, no hesitation. He was a soldier again, calm, focused, and ready to fight. The final blow came that afternoon. Jack stood outside the town hall, the sun warm on his face as he watched the crowd gather. Reporters, local officials, curious onlookers, drawn like moths to the spark of scandal they could sense in the air. Samantha and Cole arrived together, dressed in their finest clothes, their smiles tight and brittle. Samantha's eyes found Jack's across the square, but he did not flinch. He watched her carefully, noting the tremor in her hands, the way her shoulders hunched just slightly. She still thought she could talk her way out of this. She had no idea how deep the blade would cut. Ben slipped Jack a small device, a sleek black box no bigger than a deck of cards. "Press this when you are ready," he said quietly. Jack took it, his fingers steady. "Thank you," he said. As the mayor began to speak, Jack moved through the crowd, his steps measured and calm. He could feel the tension building around him, the quiet rustle of whispers as people began to sense that something was about to happen. He reached the small stage at the front, Samantha's eyes widening as she saw him step up beside the mayor. She opened her mouth, but Jack was already speaking, his voice calm, resonant, and unwavering. "Before we celebrate today," he said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, "there is something you all need to see." He pressed the button. A screen flickered to life behind him, the images of contracts, bank statements, and recorded calls filling the square with their damning light. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the truth spilled out. Samantha's lies, Cole's fraud, the betrayal that ran deeper than anyone had guessed. Samantha's face went pale, her mouth working soundlessly. Cole's eyes darted, his hands clenching into fists as the weight of his arrogance collapsed around him. Jack stood tall, his face calm and unyielding. He had no more words to give them, only the truth, laid bare for everyone to see. And as the crowd erupted in shouts and disbelief, Jack felt a quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. The reckoning had begun. Chaos unfolded in the town square. People stared at the screen, some with hands over their mouths, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The air was electric, a low hum of disbelief and fury weaving through the crowd like wildfire. Jack stood at the center of it all, his face calm, his eyes steady. He watched Samantha as she tried to step forward, her mouth opening to speak. But her voice cracked, the words dying in her throat. She looked small and lost, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Cole was not so quiet. He shoved through the crowd, his face red, eyes wide with panic. "This is a lie," he shouted. "He is making this up. This is not real." Jack turned to him, his voice low and controlled. "The documents do not lie," he said. "Every stolen dollar, every false contract, it is all right there, Cole." Cole's fists clenched. "You think you can just—" But Jack cut him off with a sharp look, his voice calm but cold as ice. "I am not thinking, Cole. I am proving." Samantha took a shaky step forward. "Jack, please," she said, her voice a trembling whisper. I never wanted this to happen." Jack's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the hurt flickered in their depths. But it was quickly buried beneath the steel of his resolve. "You chose this path," he said quietly, "and now you live with it." Around them, the crowd pressed in closer, hungry for the truth. Jack felt no triumph, only the steady weight of justice finally coming to light. He turned away from Samantha and Cole, his back straight, his shoulders squared. Let them flounder in their own lies. He had given the town the truth, and that was all that mattered. As the crowd continued to roar with disbelief and accusation, Jack made his way out of the square, every step deliberate, every breath measured. He did not look back. He found Heather waiting for him near the old courthouse steps. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with a fierce light. "It is done," she said quietly. Jack nodded. "It is only just beginning," he said. "They will try to spin this, to salvage what they can. But the truth is out now. There is no going back." Heather swallowed hard. "What will they do?" she asked. Jack's gaze was steady. "They will scramble. They will try to discredit me, discredit the evidence. But it will not work. The weight of the truth is too heavy." She looked at him, her voice a low murmur. "Are you ready for what comes next?" "I have been ready," Jack said simply. They stood in silence for a moment, the quiet weight of what they had unleashed settling over them like the hush before a storm. In the distance, he could still hear the shouts and cries of the crowd, but here, there was only the certainty of what he had done. Heather reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. "Whatever happens now," she said, "I am with you." Jack looked down at her hand, then met her eyes. "I know," he said, "and that means everything." He turned and started walking down the courthouse steps, his steps slow and sure. Behind him, the old courthouse clock chimed noon, steady, unwavering, like the heartbeat of the town itself. He knew there would be battles ahead. He knew Samantha and Cole would not go down without a fight. But Jack Hastings had never backed down from a fight, and he was not about to start now. Chapter 30. The hidden enemy. That evening, Jack sat in his study, the fire in the hearth casting warm shadows across the room. The weight of the day pressed on him, but he did not falter. He knew the next moves would be the hardest. The door creaked open and Ben stepped in, a grim expression on his face. "Jack," he said quietly, "you need to see this." Jack looked up as Ben set a laptop in front of him, the screen flickering to life. Images filled the screen. Samantha's father, sitting in a polished office, his face calm and composed. "He is moving," Ben said, "pulling strings, calling in favors. He is trying to bury this." Jack's jaw tightened. "He will not succeed," he said. "He has hidden in the shadows long enough. It is time to drag him into the light." Ben's eyes flickered. "He is dangerous, Jack. He has money, power. He will not go down easily." Jack's voice was calm and cold. "Neither will I." He studied the images, calls to politicians, quiet deals in back rooms. Every frame was another piece of the puzzle, another thread to pull. He would not let Samantha's father slip through the cracks like a shadow in the night. Ben closed the laptop, his eyes steady. "What is the next step?" Jack leaned back in his chair, the firelight glinting off his eyes. "We expose everything," he said. "Not just Samantha and Cole, but the whole rotten empire he built." Ben nodded, his expression resolute. "Then let us finish this." Outside, the wind howled against the windows, rattling the old panes like the ghosts of the past. Jack let the sound wash over him, his mind clear, his resolve unbreakable. Tomorrow, he would take the fight to the man who thought he owned everything. And this time, there would be no shadows left to hide in. At dawn, Jack stood at the edge of the river, the water dark and smooth in the first light of day. He watched it flow, steady and relentless, and felt a calm certainty settle in his chest. Heather joined him, her breath a soft cloud in the cold morning air. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice quiet. Jack turned to her, his gaze unwavering. "I am," he said. "This ends today." Back at the barn, the plan was already in motion. Ben worked at the laptop, sending the final files to every journalist, every whistleblower, every agency that had the power to tear down Samantha's father's empire. Jack watched the screen, every image another crack in the facade. Politicians bought and paid for, contracts forged and signed in back rooms, charities turned into personal banks. The truth laid bare for the world to see. He felt no triumph, only a cold satisfaction. Justice was never about feeling good. It was about setting the scales right. Heather touched his shoulder, her hand steady. "You are not alone," she said softly. Jack looked at her, his voice firm. "I know, and that is what will make the difference." As the sun rose higher, painting the sky in gold, Jack felt the last pieces of the puzzle slide into place. There was no turning back. The final push had begun. He walked outside, the air crisp and clean, and took a deep breath. Today was the day the lies ended. Today was the day the truth spoke louder than the wealth and power that had tried to bury it. And Jack Hastings was ready to see it through. By mid-morning, news outlets were buzzing with the revelations that had spilled from Jack's carefully constructed evidence. Headlines blared with scandal. Local businessman's fraud exposed. Charity scam uncovered. Whistleblower reveals decades of corruption. It was everything Jack had hoped for. He stood on the porch of his home, the crisp air sharp against his skin as he watched cars slow down to gawk at the house. Reporters gathered near the end of the driveway, cameras glinting in the sun. He did not flinch. Inside, Samantha was a ghost, pale, silent, drifting from room to room as though the walls were closing in on her. Emily was at her grandmother's house, safe from the storm. Jack had made sure of that. Ben arrived, his coat dusted with frost. "It is all over the news," he said quietly. "No one is denying it anymore." Jack nodded. "Let them talk," he said. "Let them see what has been hidden for so long." Samantha appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide and haunted. "Jack," she whispered, "please." I did not know how deep it went. He met her gaze, his expression calm but unyielding. "You knew enough," he said softly. "You chose to look away when it suited you. And now the truth will not be buried again." Tears welled in her eyes, but Jack felt no pity. She had woven this web with her father's lies, and now it was wrapped around her like chains. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words. Jack turned away from her, his mind already on the next step. There was still more to expose, more of the rot to drag out into the light. And he would not stop until every last shadow was burned away. As the day wore on, Jack found a moment of quiet in the barn. The air was cool, the faint scent of hay and oil grounding him. He stood before the board of evidence, the red threads that had once seemed tangled now forming a clear and damning path. Heather entered, her eyes bright with determination. "The calls are coming in from all over," she said. "Law enforcement, journalists, people who have been waiting for this day." Jack turned to her, his expression calm. "Good," he said, "but we are not done yet." Heather walked closer, her voice low. "Samantha's father, he has been calling in favors, trying to silence this before it spreads any further." Jack's jaw tightened. "He will fail," he said. "He has been hiding in the shadows too long. But the light is here now, and there is no running from it." She touched his arm, her fingers steady. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. He looked at her, his eyes clear and resolute. "I am more than all right," he said. "I am exactly where I need to be." For a moment, the barn was filled with nothing but the quiet hum of the world outside. Jack felt the weight of the past, the betrayal that had almost broken him, but he also felt the strength that had carried him this far. He had spent years fighting battles he could never speak of, but this was his fight, and he would see it through to the very end. He straightened, his shoulders squared. "Tell Ben to be ready," he said. "Tonight, we finish what they started." Heather nodded, her eyes fierce. "I will," she said. That evening, Jack returned to the house, the final pieces of the plan humming in his mind. Samantha sat in the living room, the television muted as she stared blankly at the flickering images of her own downfall. He stood in the doorway, his presence filling the room. She looked up at him, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. He stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Do you see it now?" he asked. "The price of every lie you chose to believe." Samantha swallowed, her eyes filling with tears. I thought I could control it," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought he promised me." Jack's expression did not waver. "Your father promised you power," he said quietly, "but he never promised you peace. And now the truth is yours to carry." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Jack watched her for a long moment, then turned away, his face calm. He had no more words for her. She had chosen her path, and he would not stand in the way of the consequences. As he walked through the house, every step was measured, deliberate. He felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that he had done what needed to be done. He paused at Emily's room, resting his hand on the doorframe. She would never have to wonder who her father was. She would never have to doubt that he had fought for the truth, no matter the cost. The house was silent, but for the soft sound of Samantha's weeping in the living room. Jack closed his eyes for a moment, then turned and walked away. Night fell over the town, the air cool and sharp as Jack drove through the winding roads to Samantha's father's estate. The old mansion loomed in the darkness, its windows dark like the eyes of a predator waiting in the shadows. He parked the truck, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. He stepped out, every movement quiet, controlled. The wind whispered through the trees, but Jack's mind was clear, his purpose unwavering. The door opened before he could knock. Samantha's father stood there, his face calm, eyes calculating. "Jack," he said, his voice smooth. "I wondered when you would come." Jack met his gaze, his voice low and cold. "You have hidden behind your power long enough," he said. "No more lies." The older man's lips curved into a thin smile. "Do you really think you can bring me down with your crusade?" he asked softly. "I have survived men tougher than you." Jack stepped closer, his eyes hard. "You survived because no one was willing to fight you on your level," he said. "But I will." A flicker of something, respect, perhaps, passed through the man's eyes. "You are your father's son," he said quietly. He was a fool, but he never gave up either. Jack did not flinch. "I am not here for your approval," he said. "I am here to end this." They stood in silence, the weight of decades pressing in around them. Then Jack turned, his voice quiet. "The world already knows the truth," he said. "You can either face it or let it consume you." He left without another word, the door closing softly behind him. In that quiet, Jack felt the final threads of the past fall away. He had done what he came to do, and no matter what the future held, he would face it with the same unbreakable resolve that had carried him through every battle he had ever fought. The night was dark and silent as Jack drove away from Samantha's father's mansion, his mind a steel trap of purpose and finality. The town lay quiet beneath the silver glow of the moon, every street and shuttered window holding its breath. Back at the barn, Heather and Ben waited. Heather's face was pale but determined, her fingers twisting a worn necklace around her neck. "Did he threaten you?" she asked quietly as Jack walked in. Jack shook his head. "He tried," he said, "but he knows the walls are closing in. There is nothing left for him to hide behind." Ben's eyes flickered with relief and worry. "The files have gone everywhere," he said. "Every newspaper, every law office, every agency that matters. They cannot ignore it now." Jack nodded. "Then we are almost there." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of it all settling around them. Jack walked to the board of evidence one last time, studying the web of names and numbers that had consumed his life for months. He reached out, pulling down the final thread. "It ends tonight," he said softly. Heather looked at him, her voice low. "What about Samantha?" she asked. "What about the girl you once loved?" Jack's eyes were calm. "I buried that love a long time ago," he said. "I loved the woman I thought she was. But that woman never really existed." The words settled between them, quiet and final. Jack turned away, his mind already moving forward. "Tell Emily I will be home soon," he said. Heather's eyes shone with understanding. "We will be waiting," she said. Jack walked out into the night, the cold wind at his back. The final play had begun, and he was ready to see it through. By dawn, the news had spread like wildfire. Jack watched from a distance as the mansion that had been Samantha's father's fortress became the epicenter of a scandal no one could contain. Reporters crowded the gates, cameras flashing, voices raised. Police vehicles idled nearby, the officers inside quiet but watchful. Jack stood across the street, the collar of his coat turned up against the cold morning air. He saw Samantha standing on the front steps, her face pale, her shoulders hunched beneath the weight of it all. She looked nothing like the woman he had once married. No longer polished, no longer confident. Just a ghost, stripped of her illusions. Her father emerged beside her, his face a mask of calm. But Jack saw the flicker in his eyes, the crack in the armor. The man was cornered, and he knew it. Cole appeared moments later, pale and frantic, his movements jerky and wild. He tried to push past the reporters, tried to spin a new lie, but the crowd was done listening. The truth was louder than any story he could tell. Jack watched in silence, every detail seared into his mind. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, how it would feel to see the walls come down, to watch them stripped bare for all to see. But now that it was here, he felt only a quiet calm. The fight was over. The truth had spoken. and nothing they could say or do would change that. He turned away, his heart steady. Let them face the world they had built on lies. He had done what he came to do, and now it was time to walk away. Jack returned home that night, the house quiet and warm against the chill of the evening. Emily was asleep in her room, her breathing soft and even. Heather sat at the kitchen table, her eyes bright with relief. "It is done then?" she asked. Jack nodded, his voice low. "It is over," he said. "The papers are filed. The evidence is in the hands of those who will not let it die. Samantha's father, Cole, they will spend the rest of their lives answering for what they did." Heather let out a slow breath, her shoulders relaxing. "And you?" she asked. "What will you do now?" Jack looked around the room. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. Home, peace, the things he had fought so hard to protect. "I will start over," he said simply. "I will build something new, something honest. For Emily. For me." Heather reached out, her fingers brushing his. "You deserve that," she said softly. He met her gaze, his eyes clear. "We all do," he said. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, the night deep and still. Jack felt the weight of the past slipping away, replaced by the quiet promise of what lay ahead. He had faced the worst of them, and won. He had fought for the truth, no matter the cost. And now, he would begin again, because that was what mattered in the end. Not the betrayals, not the lies, but the courage to rise, to fight, and to build something new. The morning after the final exposure, Jack stood at the edge of the river, the cold water glinting in the early light. The town behind him was still waking, but he felt like he was finally free, like the weight of a lifetime of lies had been lifted from his shoulders. He watched the water flow, calm and steady, and felt that same calm settling into his bones. He had faced every truth, no matter how painful. He had forced those who thought they were untouchable to answer for what they had done. And now, he could breathe again. Heather arrived a few minutes later, her breath misting in the air. "It is over," she said softly. "I saw the news this morning. Samantha's father has been arrested. Cole is facing charges. Samantha, she is gone. She left town last night." Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. "She will have to live with what she did," he said quietly. "That is her burden now." Heather studied him, her eyes warm and understanding. "And what about you, Jack? What happens next?" He turned to her, a small smile touching his lips. "I build something new," he said. "No more shadows, no more lies. Just an honest life, something real. For Emily. For myself." Heather reached out and squeezed his hand. "You have earned that," she said softly. "You have fought hard enough." Jack looked at the river one last time, then turned away, his steps sure and steady. He was done fighting ghosts. Now he was ready to live. That evening, Jack sat on the porch of his home, Emily asleep inside, her soft breathing a quiet comfort. He watched the sun set over the hills, the sky painted in shades of gold and purple. Ben joined him, a beer in hand, his face tired but relieved. "You did it, Jack," he said. "You brought them down." Jack's eyes were calm. "It was never about bringing them down," he said. "It was about making sure they could never hurt anyone else again." Ben nodded. "And now?" Jack took a slow breath. "Now I protect what matters," he said. "Emily, this home, the life I want to build." They sat in quiet companionship, the weight of the past finally easing. Jack felt the scars inside him, but they no longer defined him. He had faced the darkness and won. He thought of Samantha, of the woman he had once loved and the man she had chosen to be. And he felt no more anger, just a quiet acceptance that some battles could not be won with love alone. As the last light of day slipped below the horizon, Jack leaned back in his chair, feeling the peace he had fought so hard to claim. And in that moment, he knew that he was done with the past. The next day, Jack woke early and walked to the river one last time, Emily's hand in his. She looked up at him, her innocent eyes wide with trust. "Are you happy now, Daddy?" she asked softly. Jack knelt beside her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "I am," he said, his voice steady, "because the truth sets us free, even if it hurts." She nodded, her small fingers curling around his. And as they stood together, the river flowing steady and strong, Jack felt something deep and unbreakable settle inside him. Peace. He turned to the camera. "Turned to you, dear audience." And with a quiet, serious gaze, he asked, "Would you have fought for the truth, no matter what it cost? Would you have risked everything to set things right? Let us know in the comments. Where are you watching this story from? Share your thoughts. I am listening. And if this tale of betrayal and redemption spoke to you, please like and subscribe so you will not miss the next epic revenge story. Until then, stay sharp, stay true, and take care of your own truths.